Sitting down with me today is Mark Cotter and head girls basketball coach Ross Baker. They are both cancer survivors, and they're here to talk to me about the first inaugural Coaches versus Cancer basketball game. We're taking a full court press against cancer right here at Hazlet High School next Friday, February 1st. Okay, so first off, what was the inspiration and maybe the history behind the Coaches versus Cancer organization?
Sure. In 1993, out at the University of Missouri, there was a coach, Norm Sloan, and he challenged his fans by saying, for every three-pointer my team makes this season, will you donate $1 to the American Cancer Society? And that's how it all began, very innocently, just some way to raise money to fight cancer. And so here we are 25 years later. As a part of that Coaches versus Cancer, they've allowed the high schools now to do that, not only in college, but in high school as well. Roya, this is a big week for Coaches versus Cancer, and if you're seeing basketball games on TV, you'll see coaches in a sports coat and tie and sneakers. Normally they've got street shoes on. Well, that's part of it. It's a subset called suits and sneakers, but it's all Coaches versus Cancer. So when you take the game of basketball and you use that as a tool to fight cancer, and that's really what this coach did, very innocently challenging his fans, and now millions of dollars have been raised over the 25 years.
What would you say is one of the most maybe inspirational stories that you've seen, while being involved in this and, with Coaches versus Cancer? Is there something that stands out to you? Sure.
It's easy to go online and read about inspirational stories. There's a lot of resources for that. In my own experience as being a cancer survivor, I remember people I went through treatment with. And I remember in particular one lady who was blind, and she had breast cancer. And I was thinking about the challenge of having that, not being able to be visual, having that already as a challenge in your life, and then you have to go through chemo and radiation for breast cancer. Sitting in the waiting room with her, I found her to be upbeat, optimistic, and so here we are 11 years later since that happened, and I'm still thinking about her because of the attitude that she exhibited from that standpoint. Coach Baker, of course, locally, as we mentioned earlier, and I think there are inspirational stories occurring all the time that we learn from all parts of the country. There's no shortage of people that can inspire us. We just have to open ourselves up to reading their story, learning about them, and then they motivate us, like we're doing with this game, to do more, to say, okay, I survived, how do I pay back? And that's really what Coach Baker wanted to do when he came to me this fall and said, Mark, look, we're both cancer survivors. How can we pay that back? And while we're doing that, why don't we just ask other people if they want to join us? And that's where the idea of joining Coaches versus Cancer started. And so we're doing a lot with the American Cancer Society to make this happen.
And we're going to get Coach Baker on and talk to him in a little bit. So, coaching, that is such a time-consuming career, and this is, a game that these athletes are going to play, but they're playing for something bigger. So what do you think this means for the athletes to be able to, wear these special jerseys, to have this event? What do you think that means for them?
Yeah, Roy, a great question. I think it'll be visually demonstrated in this way. There are special uniforms that we're going to have for the game that are designed by the American Cancer Society and their vendor, and they're made possible to us thanks to Farm Bureau, the company itself, and then the local agent in Okemos, A.J. Clausen Agency, has agreed to sponsor these uniforms. And what's important about those, not only the color design, but on the back of each jersey for each player is a person they either want to honor or remember. So we can see right away who's important to them without ever stopping to ask them, who do you know who's had cancer? And you're going to see names like Grandpa, Grandma, Aunt. There's one that says Neighbor Steve. So I think that's how they demonstrate it. I've not spoken with them individually on what it means to them. Sometimes when you're a young person, you haven't had a chance to be as exposed to cancer as much, unless it is the grandparents or something like that. So what I like about it is that they're embracing it. Both Coach Smith, the boys varsity coach, all of our coaches, freshmen, JV, All 6 teams, basketball teams from Hazlet, are going to be here that night. And they're all going to do something for the community. They're going to say to the Hazlet community, look, we're young people, we realize this is a challenge, and we're going to do something about it.
And what are other ways that people can get involved, say they can't make it to the game? What other ways can people support this?
Yeah, that's great. We are selling these t-shirts, believe it or not.
Yes, I love the color.
Specially designed.
Great
in town we have a shop here in Hazlet called T-Shirt Goods. And both Denise and Kim have been great about it, original design. The lime color has a meaning as well. The lime color is the color for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And perhaps Coach Baker will share that with, that's the kind of cancer he had. So as each cancer, you've seen those little ribbons you can put on, each has a color. So lime green is Coach's cancer. So we chose that as our color overall. And then the black just for a contrast. So you can order those online. That we can share with that. There's a way of doing that. You can make donations online. So there's still time to do that. Also, we have wristbands that we're going to have available for the game, $1 a piece, and it has our theme on it that's called Full Court Press Against Cancer. So you think basketball, full court press is an event where you're really putting pressure on your opponent.
Attack it head on.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that is our theme, our slogan for the event. And then just coming to the game, we're going to have the opportunity, we have something called a coin toss. And so when you're in the game, you're going to be asked to reach in your pockets and take all your coins out and toss them in the donation bin. Yeah. So the little play on words, but it's amazing how just coins can add up quite quickly to do that. So this is our inaugural event, of course. So everything we raise, Royal, will be a benefit. We don't really have a goal in mind. It'd be nice to raise 1,000, 2,500 and just keep going. But we know that every dollar that we raise goes to the smart people, and that's the scientists, that's the researchers, that's the caregivers who can really make life more tolerable for people affected by cancer.
Yeah. And clearly cancer is something that you can't, do alone. It's the support of so many people. So if you could describe community support or community to me in one word, or maybe a few words, how would you describe it, especially this community?
I think for how they support cancer and so on, there are, in my view, kind of 2 ways to approach this. There are people who have had cancer who like to not share that. That it's a personal experience. There are others who want to pay it back, who are very verbal, very outgoing about that. We have those in the community. We have in Meridian Township. I'm sure the same thing would go for Okemos. They're out there, and sometimes they're sort of stealth. They're doing this great work without personal notoriety. There are people, I'm sure, that go to Sparrow and help out down there, and maybe McLaren, wherever we have cancer places to go. I think there's probably a caregiver caring for an aunt and uncle full time that we don't know about. So there is this, I think, not only in the cancer world, but in any community, there are people who do great charitable work. And how they choose to express that varies. So what we hope for this one night in the Meridian Township, that this sort of becomes the epicenter of the whole Meridian Township. Yep. And we can get around it, fill the gym, have everybody wear lime green, and just for this one night say, cancer, take that.
Absolutely. Well, you guys heard that here. Mark, thank you so much for, letting me speak to you, and this was an absolute honor, and we can't wait to be at the game and cover it and kick cancer's butt.
Well, it's great, Roy, having you out, and your videographer, Rita. We appreciate that. Thanks to HOMTV, Deb, and everybody there, Brandy, they've been great to us. And HOMTV really is the key for serving the community in these service areas where it's part of their DNA, I think, at HOMTV, is to be of service to the community, and your being here does that, so thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So this time last year was, a lot different for you. It was a completely different story. You were going through a diagnosis and a treatment. So could you take me through that?
Sure, yeah. We found out on January 13th that I had cancer. We got the official diagnosis about a couple weeks later that it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We started radiation at the end of January, and I had 10 rounds of radiation, and then I started my chemotherapy treatments February 9th, and I had 8 chemotherapy treatments.
Wow. And you know, coaching, that's no joke. It's very time consuming and at times can be very stressful. So what role did that play in your recovery?
Just the support that I received from the team and from the girls last year. They would stop over and see me. They'd stop in and see how my kids were doing. They'd bring meals over, they'd call, they'd text. And just that support made me realize just how close-knit we were, and that and as I started to get better and better reports from my doctors, I knew that once I got the all clear that I would be back coaching.
And is there a certain moment in your recovery or your treatment that stands out to you that you'd like to share with us?
I think just all the support that we received from the community. I mean, we had 6 months of meals delivered to our home. We had neighbors snow blow our driveway and our sidewalk throughout the winter. We had neighbors and friends mow our lawn and put mulch in our yard and take care of our weeds and make sure our kids were picked up from the bus and from school, and just incredible people that live in this community that reached out to help us with anything we needed, and it was just, you know, it's hard to put in words for my wife and I and our family just how important it was.
Yeah, and you know, clearly you're a basketball coach, so the sport means a lot to you. So what has basketball meant to you in this, you know, whole time?
I think it's given me kind of some normalcy back. You know, being able to put my focus into practice times and to you know, game prep, and you know, it's another step in kind of the recovery where, you know, things are kind of back to normal. Things are, you know, how we want them to be, and I'm not worried about doctor's appointments or checkups or scans or anything like that. Now I can just focus on teaching and coaching, which is what I love.
And what is maybe a piece of advice or something that you would tell someone who maybe just received a diagnosis or is about to go through treatment? What would you tell someone?
Sure. I had wonderful advice from Chris Woodworth, who is also a fellow cancer survivor, and I coached her daughter Tegan last year, and she came over. Her and her husband came over, I think the first Saturday that we were home after the diagnosis, and she said, the one bit of advice that she gave me that really stuck with me was she said that you're going to have dark moments, and those are places that you can visit, but you can't live there. And she said you always got to be looking forward and thinking positive. And I think that's what I would try to communicate to someone who was recently diagnosed is cancer is always going to be a part of your story, and that's okay, but it doesn't have to be the final chapter. So I think that's really important to remember.
Yeah. In this game, boys and girls, what do you want to see? What do you hope that they get out of it, since they're, you know, they're playing for something bigger than just a win?
Yeah, I think the big thing is unfortunately cancer touches us all. You know, it impacts all of our lives, and so this gives us a chance to not only compete, you know, on a Friday night against St. John's, who's one of our rivals, but also to kind of remember either those who have had the battle against cancer and luckily survived, or unfortunately those who didn't survive their battle with cancer. I think it's a good night to remember them as well.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being on and telling our story, and can't wait to watch boys and girls basketball take on St. John's for your events. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The inaugural Coaches vs. Cancer event will be next Friday, February 1st, right here at Hazlitt High School. The boys and girls will take on St. John's.